Welcome to part 2. We start about 8 minutes into the Ogrub video, but don't worry, you haven't missed any of the storyline. I've just been building up Lydia's purpose, trying to make viewers like her, and I've been progressing with the main storyline as it gives Ogrub plenty of opportunities to slaughter everybody, which has been one of the main appeals of this series so far. He's now off to arrange a peace council, which I think was brilliantly suited for Ogrub since he's anything but. Some people said it was hard to know what was the director's commentary in the first video and what was the actual video. Just know that if you can see my face in the bottom left corner of the screen, then it's the director's commentary. But the main quest isn't going to beat itself. Ogrub next had to arrange a peace treaty. These speedrun segments never take as long as they look like they should. You can run across Skyrim in about 20 minutes, so these are actually some of the fastest parts of the video to make. I thought they were some of the most fun parts from the first video, but by this third instalment I feel they've been done before, and I did my best to limit their use in this video, as well as adding a twist to it by having him fast travel the last 10 meters or so to play into Ogrub growing old and tired. Push for an embarrassing length of time. Back in his day, the roads weren't so bumpy and the days weren't so long. It looked like he was getting tired, but he swears he wasn't, and that he was simply bored of the scenery. So he fast travelled the rest of the way. I love Skyrim as a game, but its writing isn't a part that interests me. The main stories have always been the weak part of Elder Scrolls games, and I'm quite similar to Ogrub in that I skip most of it. Hopefully other players can also relate to Ogrub's rush to skip dialogue scenes. You don't need to have played Skyrim to understand or to enjoy these videos, but I think it helps because you'll get more of the jokes and jabs that I make at the game. In a way, I think these videos show what Skyrim is better than most reviews do.
Yes, fine, I'll come to this greybeard council.
This fight scene did go on for a bit longer, but I cut it. I'll show you the rough version here. I had him killing all the troops outside, as well as a drawn out courier part. I thought long and hard about keeping this in, especially since the courier gets his revenge later by freezing Ogrub during the Ebony Warrior fight, but it interrupted the flow of the sequence and I felt it would have bored some viewers. Plus, by this point I knew I had to get started on the video story as soon as I could, or this video would inflate to some ridiculous length, like 30 minutes or more. And now for the final conventional speedrun segment. I'm normally pretty good at running across Skyrim, even with the HUD disabled, but I did mess this one up by going the wrong way, and it went on for longer than I wanted it to. I'm so bored of speedrun segments, let's just skip this one. Did you know that back in 2011, I uploaded a series of Ogrub videos to YouTube? I thought that Skyrim would become a rather popular game and wanted to upload content for it early on. The videos never got more than a few hundred views, but they followed the original Ogrub's adventures. A lot of them were rather boring, showing how marriage works and the orphanage story, and I decided this series didn't live up to my YouTubing standards, so I removed them. I won't be re-uploading them anywhere because they would be the lowest effort Skyrim videos on YouTube, which you can get away with when the game's first released and if it's as good as Skyrim was, but certainly not 8 years later and definitely not on this channel, which prides itself in producing high quality, grown-up content that doesn't stoop to toilet humour. You guys are better than that. Although, having said that, I have borrowed from a few of these videos since, but strangely, not this one. This is only the second time that I've ever seen this bug, but I'm pleased it showed up when it did. It reminds me of the Radiant Raiment scene from Ogrub's first video, where the game messes up and Ogrub has to try and fix it somehow. I particularly like how they all went after Lydia in this scene and how she just stands there looking a bit confused. Not like this. Ogrub's tale couldn't end like this. But then he had an idea. I felt that joke missed the mark, but I'm not sure how because Ogrub solving problems by bashing things should always be amusing. Fortunately, leaving the city then returning again solved the issue, and before long, Ogrub the expert negotiator had convinced Ulfric to attend the peace treaty as well.
Yes.
Now to head back to the mountain. Anyway, a lot of you noticed the Ebony Warrior in this scene. I couldn't believe my luck when he showed up at the right moment and missed like that. I knew I had to include it in the video, but worried at the time that it might make him seem weak or rubbish, but I think his inclusion is subtle enough to act as a tasty Easter egg for observant viewers. This one did work as a pantomime joke, and the chat spammed Ebony Warrior for a while after this scene. And on to yet another speedrun. By this point, even Ogrub was tired of doing them. Not that he's a real person, and I thought that fast travelling out of sight of Lydia nicely shortened the sequence, as well as hinting that he might actually care what Lydia thinks about him. It also shows that he knows how frowned upon fast travelling is. And it's funny because we know that Lydia still ran all the way to the mountain. Poor Lydia. This is one of the first changes shown between the published YouTube version of the video and the final one, If you look closely enough, you can see that I forgot to disable resample in this scene, since I simply slowed down a speedrun segment, which I deliberately enabled resampling for to give it that blurry, speedy effect. But it looks bad when played back at normal speeds. I tried to use cloudier, darker scenes for this video to mirror the darker plot, but by this point it was too pretentious and I was like, screw it, because nice weather looks so much prettier. I upped the contrast to criminal levels in these scenes, similar to the Markarth intro in the second video, but nobody noticed that. The Greybeards were all present and accounted for, too, and didn't seem to hold their grudge against Oddgrub. Like I said, jolly decent folk. For anybody unfamiliar with Skyrim, this is the most boring bit of the game. Every Skyrim player will agree with me. You have to sit and watch people talk for ages, and you can't even skip the dialogue. I got bored simply doing it for this video. But you know what? I think a lot of Oddgrub's best sequences are during random scenes like this. It doesn't need to further the plot, which gives me extra freedom to take the piss. And no scene shows it more clearly than this one, where I mock the important leaders discussing important topics around the table. It might also be a profound insight into how Oddgrub perceives other people in Skyrim. Maybe. Also, people ask me why Oddgrub sided with the Imperials rather than the Stormcloaks, and my response to that is that it was the first option he encountered, so he picked it. But the truth is he doesn't give a damn about either side. And neither do I. Then Oddgrub shared his feelings about the meeting. I cut this battle short because it was very similar to the Greybeard battle from earlier, but I did want to see all those people tumbling off the side of the mountain. It doesn't seem fair that they can waste so much of Oddgrub's life and get away with it. Plus, it highlights a real problem with Skyrim's story. The game lets you do whatever you want, and yet forces your character to arrange a peace council, even if you're Oddgrub. So it only makes sense for the peace council to become a fight. It was probably best that Oddgrub and Lydia left for the wilderness until everybody forgot about this whole incident. You see what I did there? I found a way of moving on from the crowd-pleasing classic Oddgrub content and onto the actual story for this video. And it only took me 13 minutes. I love this clip of Lydia triggering traps. One day her clumsiness will be the end of her. But yeah, hopefully this passes as classic Oddgrub content on your first viewing, but I hope to use this to transform Lydia into a character you might actually like. Anybody playing Skyrim grows attached to their companion. It's not like they're amazing warriors. They pretty much serve as portable treasure chests. But despite all their flaws and limitations, everyone grows fond of them and feels terrible when they die. Probably bad enough to load their last save, even if it means having to do a whole mission again. I learned my lesson with companions in Guild Wars. I had this pet cat or something and grew fond of it, but then my friend said that bears were the best, so I got one of those instead and realised there wasn't much difference. My friend was all like, oh well, I didn't know, and that was that. But to me, I felt I had betrayed my original pet. I felt so bad about it that I started the game again. It feels so good to get the confession out there. But yeah, even Oddgrub isn't completely heartless. I decided that there was only so much I could do with his story if he remained a cold-blooded, merciless killer, and decided that the only thing I could think of that could justify a change of heart was to have him kill his companion. We know Oddgrub. We know he kills everybody. Even Lydia can't evade his blade forever. And I want for people to feel bad about her death because, well, we've only laughed at everyone that Oddgrub has killed so far. Children have died. Of course, I don't want to hint at her death yet. Instead, I disguise their relationship as a love story. I hate love stories. They always feel forced. But I thought that pretending this would become one, building it all up, only for Oddgrub to kill her, would satisfy fans of Oddgrub and also ultimately lead to his redemption. In case I didn't make it obvious enough, Oddgrub does not have romantic feelings for Lydia. That's going too far. That's not Oddgrub. But she is his friend. His only friend. And surely that's as good an excuse as any for him to feel bad about killing her.
I am sworn to carry your burdens.
In case you hadn't realised, Lydia's sarcastic sounding carry your burdens line is a dank meme in Skyrim. Boy, did she carry those burdens. And there's the accidental fish eating sequence for this video. It's one of my favourite running jokes in these videos, but it's only really funny if it's shown and not explained. So I've ruined it now. Now this next sequence is either the most beautiful or most gay part of the video, depending on how you feel about Lydia falling in love with Oddgrub. It's not just Oddgrub. All players treat their companions like dirt. I know you do too, so don't try to deny it. And the only explanation I can think of for why they remain faithful to players is because they're secretly madly in love with them. Enough to overlook the abusive and frankly unacceptable way that they're all treated. I know what it's like to be in love with someone who doesn't love me back, but rather than to feel sorry for me, I think I got a pretty good deal. It's like they painted everywhere they went with a strong nostalgia that only I could feel, and I guess for unlimited present-day nostalgia on tap whenever you want it, carrying dragon bones and being blasted off cliffs occasionally isn't too bad a price to pay. I think that love is a rather selfish emotion, and one of the poorest excuses to be nice to somebody. And that's another reason why I think that Oddgrub's redemption should have come from a friendship rather than a romance. This Skyrim song sounds most like it belongs in Lord of the Rings, so I'm happy I got to use it in this sequence. I also got to use a huge number of slow motion clips here. This was all captured at normal speed, then I used painfully slow software to create painfully slow new frames between each of the existing ones in order to make it look smooth even when slowed down. If you look closely enough, then you can spot the artifacts. At the start of the Oddgrub video, you can see the dragon's snout doing something rather weird, but it looks okay in motion. The beauty of 60 FPS video is that each frame is more similar to the one before it, which makes it easier for the computer to add yet more frames between them. It makes me wonder if this is one of the reasons why Peter Jackson insisted on filming The Hobbit in 48 rather than the standard 24 frames per second. If you remember any of the cheesy looking slow motion scenes from Lord of the Rings, then you'd probably understand why he'd want 48 FPS. Still didn't save the Hobbit trilogy from being an utter disaster though, did it? Sorry, I went off topic there. Lydia loves Oddgrub despite how she's treated. It's a tragedy, and while Oddgrub clearly doesn't give a shit, he does give a piss. Oddgrub needed to piss. I've lost the making of this sequence, but just picture me in the middle of the night pouring water out of a bottle outside while filming it. I like to think people were watching. This scene is weird, but it was fun during the premiere, as I don't think anybody really knew how to react to it. And that's this video's jump scare. I originally intended to have more sneak dream attacks in this video, but a bit like the speedrun segments, I got bored of them and just wanted to move on with the story. Now, how do you go from Oddgrub having a nightmare to being mad enough to kill his best friend? I don't think this transition works if you think too much about it. Luckily, Oddgrub doesn't. Having him as the protagonist lets me get away with murder. I thought that maybe some people would overthink things and suspect Lydia of being the Ebony Warrior in disguise or something, but I thought that by openly showing that Oddgrub was accusing her in some way that it would kill that plot twist and would make people pity her more. And then, after all this, I show her being all compassionate and concerned for Oddgrub as he goes mad, just to twist the knife further when he betrays her. And even after all this, I thought the transition was too abrupt, so I later went back and added the massacre in the tunnels. I had no plans for this bit, so just spent a few hours butchering everybody in different ways until I had some cool looking shots. And now for the most important bit of the whole video. I think now is a good time to show another one of Oddgrub's videos from 2011. See if you can spot the similarities.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I had been planning this sequence since November last year. I was so excited about finally getting around to making it, but with it was more worried that it wouldn't live up to the idea that I had for it in my head. I'm not sure where the Oblivion trailer music came from, but once that became part of the plan for it in my head, I couldn't get rid of it. You know it's coming. So I drew this scene out as much as I could. Also, I had to disable AI after the trap had been triggered to stop Lydia from stepping back when Oddgrub got too close to her. And using the mace nicely mirrors the first kill this series showed. The Oblivion trailer shows up a few times in this video actually. I closely quote some of Patrick Stewart's lines earlier in the video.
For 65 years I have ruled this empire.
For 65 years he had terrorized this empire. Generals and kings had fallen at his hand.
Generals and kings have knelt at my command.
As well as after Lydia's death, he tossed her off Skyrim's jaws into oblivion.
And close shut the jaws of oblivion.
Every Oddgrub video has had Lydia saying her burdens line as something plummets off the top of the mountain. Second video, it was Lydia herself. And in the first video, it was Oddgrub, and I just put it in there because it sounded right.
I am sworn to carry your burdens.
But now I'm pleased I did, because it looks like this betrayal was planned since the very beginning of Oddgrub's story. Which it wasn't. It's just lucky chance. With hindsight, Oddgrub's petty soul stealing and weapon binding sequence looks like a poor excuse to enable the rest of the plot. But actually that came first and the plot followed. I really wanted the most cold-hearted death for Lydia I could imagine, and went from there. But ebony gauntlets were chosen as an item last minute because I wanted the video's title to literally refer to Lydia, among others in the story. She's now literally a warrior made of ebony. And then these clips are a bit like those at the very start of the video, but without Lydia. because she's dead. This was perhaps the most scary part of the premiere for me to watch, because the chat's reaction to her death would determine how the rest of the video was received. If people didn't care for Lydia and were all like, "Begone thought," then Ogrub's redemption wouldn't have worked and this video would have been an utter disaster. Luckily, people did seem to care for her. In fact, I've had comments from people who stopped liking Ogrub after he killed her. This is great! You've finally seen Ogrub for who he is. It's just unfortunate it took you 3 videos and hundreds of innocents dying to figure out that Ogrub's an evil person. And just to confuse things more, killing Lydia eventually turns him into a good guy. If you're unsure whether you should like Ogrub or not, then I don't blame you. So there you have it. The consequences of Ogrub's behaviour have finally caught up with him, and he's got to somehow make everything right with the 20 or so minutes of screen time that remain. And he's also got to complete Skyrim's main quest. And he should probably get around to fighting the Ebony Warrior at some point as well. It's all sounding about as rushed as Season 8 of Game of Thrones.